Hi, my name is Misha Green, and I'm the creator and writer of Lovecraft Country.
My name is Journey Smollett. I play Letitia Letty Lewis.
My name is Jonathan Majors. I play Atticus, Freeman.
My name is Kevin Blank, and I'm the visual effects supervisor for Lovecraft Country.
This is Varieties Making a Scene.
In this episode, we'll be talking about the Shoggoth attack.
From Sundown, the series premiere.
What happens in this sequence is that you see not only the physical danger, but you see the emotional danger.
The scene spoke so much about Black rage and Black safety and Black trauma and the metaphor of the Shoggoth physically chasing us, but also is the Shoggoth a bigger monster, or these police officers that we're trapped in this cabin with the bigger monster?
I think that's classic horror genre. You know what I mean? I think the monster is always the metaphor for the thing that is the real monster in our society. So when the racist cops get what they deserve, of course that's wish fulfillment, because you're like, yes, good. Because that's not how this goes in reality. That's part of the fun of watching something like a Lovecraft Country, is understanding that, yes, it's dealing with real issues about what's going on in America with race. But at the same time, you get to come and see asshole sheriffs who are fighting over with each other still in the cabin, instead of trying to save everyone, still being racist inside that cabinet, end up turning into the monster physically. And then you get to kill that monster. I think that's why the genre exists in a way, to me. It's to be able to step away from the trauma, but deal with the trauma at the same time.
You know, racism is a demonic spirit. These Shoggoths are demonic spirits, and our heroes are engaged in a spiritual warfare.
Letty is taking the war outside and trying to save us, right? Trying to get the car and get to safety. Atticus and Uncle George are stuck in the war in the moment, and we're watching how these racists are turning into actual monsters. And even in that moment, the amount of dignity that the Freeman men have, they're splattered in blood, they've been chased, they've been shot at, their lives are on the line, they've been humiliated to a degree. And it is the Freeman men that begin to try to negotiate with the monster. They try to get the human being to see the horse shit in front of them and say, if you do not, as Atticus says, shoot the motherfucker, right? We will all perish.
He shuts down that soldier instinct, that warrior instinct in Atticus. I mean, and it just creates this level of conflict that is maddening, because we're already in such high stakes. We're already in so much conflict. Dude, let the soldier fulfill his mission.
Up until this point, we understand that Atticus had been in war, right? We have no idea to what degree. When you see him run, you go, okay, well, he didn't learn that in Chicago, right? That Atticus sprint, right, is a war-learned survival technique.
I knew that I wanted to pay homage to H.P. Lovecraft, and I knew I wanted to make our own versions of vampires, because the metaphor is that they're in a sundown town and they can't be there after dark as a Black person. And that is the real life horror. And to juxtapose that, we wanted to create, what is sundown? You also immediately think vampires in the genre space. So what's our version of that mixed with H.P. Lovecraft? So we knew we wanted to have a lot of eyes. The original Shoggoth is a blob that moves around, though. Then we were like, nope, we want something much scarier that's coming after our people. So that's where it started on the page. And from that, you get in with all of, these creature creators.
Eventually, the Shoggoth scenes went to Frame Store London, and they did an amazing job. On top of executing the scenes, they also designed the Shoggoths. Building off of an original design, they were multi-eyed, which is the typical Lovecraft Shoggoth characteristic. But at the same time, they were going to be fast-moving creatures, guardians of a society. Another characteristic of Shoggoth lore is kind of a moving blob with multiple eyes, and these guys were not that.
And they're like, well, what does it move like a gorilla? And you're like, it moves like nothing we've seen before. And they sit there like, so a gorilla? because we still have to make it move. Like, and then you're like, oh, so you can't just say it moves like that.
Misha and I had discussions about different animals and the way they would move and things like that. At some point, I pitched something along the line of like a gorilla tiger, a gorilla in that they could stand on their knuckles and appear very strong and powerful, but a tiger that could have a full four-legged gait and run very quickly.
And so you start from there, and then everybody comes in and you kind of start building and building and building, and you just want it to be scary.
The first design had these appendages, but they just seemed to kind of hang loosely. So when they ran, they kind of bounced around and looked a little silly. So, suggestions that I had were some type of retraction of those arms that could basically fold into maybe like some rib cage insert area so that when it ran at full four-legged gait, it was streamlined. It was Misha's suggestion to add a tail. And then it was like, oh, let's put a gnarly stabby thing on the end of the tail. So, I mean, it really just kind of evolved from killing weapons. It is a killing machine. It can run fast. It can stand. It can be imposing. It can dissect you. It can slash you in a quick pass by. It was like, how many different killing mechanisms can we give this creature? And I will give Framestore all the credit for making a wonderful jaw. This kills and eats so many things that it's constantly losing teeth. So let's just take the concept of a shark's mouth that basically has rows that just as it loses teeth, it just has another one in replacement. Its mouth is essentially a wood chipper.
When I was first pitching it and I was talking about this sequence and the turn of this sequence, and I was like, and the idea that he then becomes the monster. And in a way, it's like in the start of the sequence, they're down on the ground. You're like, oh, this is going to become a lynching. And we've seen this amount of times and we don't want to do it. And then it's almost a relief that the monsters come.
This is the same officer. So how is this officer going to respond truthfully in this moment? He's still going to try to dominate. He's still going to try to be in this power struggle with Atticus. Such great writing.
What we all saw in the day was, I believe the actor's name is Jamie, right? Jamie was, acting his ass off in the best way, and he had blood and, dots and green suit under his stuff. And that was all great. And then that was the transformation, right? And then we would freeze, or we would cut. And the next part would be, he would actually be somewhat a shoggoth practically. Like the suit would be different.
The evolution of how they turn and stuff like that. There was a really, nice makeup job that was done, but we gave it a little visual effects assist, some coloring and things like that. And then we wanted to do more complicated things, more werewolf transformation. Like I'm a human person and I'm moving from a 6-foot form to potentially an 8-foot form. So there's growth, and that's painful, and it's ugly, and it's disgusting, and it's bloody. And how do we show all those elements?
The other Shoggoths are animals to us, but this was a person we hated before he turned into a monster. So, and also we do get a lot closer to him than we get to the other Shoggoths. So I think you're seeing that meanness with him too.
And so we had, a pretty great facsimile to be dealing with. It didn't have the texture, the movement of it. It did give a pretty good impression as into what was happening with all that adrenaline and the blood and this and that. It didn't take much for us to, go after it, make it so.
Rodeo Effects did these transformations. They did a lovely job. They kind of took what the sheriff was in his makeup form. They took the final Shoggoth that Framestore had done. And there was some earlier designs of things that they wanted to do with makeup that weren't able to be achieved earlier. And then we basically made a digital version of like 2 stages and then the in-betweens. And again, we had, I don't remember specifically, but probably like a 4 to 6 shot opportunity to go from A to B.
Even in him transforming, he's taking that kind of monstrous self that we already have seen, and we're going to feel more monstrous, and it feels better when you slam into him with that car than anything else. Get him into the headlights!
The hardest part of the sequence is actually the second part of the sequence, where after we pulled After I fooled Uncle George in front of the Woody, and I go out, and Lydia's out there with the flares, right, getting busy, and then I come running out, jumping out, and then we're throwing the flares out.
We were racing the sun when we shot it. It was raining, and it wasn't supposed to be raining. The rain was messing with the flares. And there were a lot of inherent conditions that made this challenging sequence even more challenging for us.
I burned my chest, not bad, but she like one of the sparkles hit my chest, and I was like, "This is fucking awesome!" And then we're just at it, doing it.
I kept feeling Jonathan's energy and feeding off of that, and the flares, man. I mean, they were a bitch because I mean, one popped in my eye and was like burning my eye, and like popped in my shoe and sock caught on fire. There was a lot going on, but you use that adrenaline. You try to convert that into ammunition.
And it's like high energy, and it's wide, right? And so when it's wide, everything's alive.
If you have any last ounce of gas in your tank, you're using that for the battle. I mean, Atticus and Letty literally are two soldiers on the front lines battling these shoggoths.
It's rage, right? Like we're raging, to stay alive in this moment.
And Jonathan and I had to work together because it was such a dance that there was no time to really rehearse or choreograph our movements or coordinate the flares and make sure that we're not throwing flares at each other. We just put the cameras on the handheld because the crane broke, and so you got the cameraman in here just trying to capture.
And if it comes here, we look there. It goes there, we look there. You go there, you look there. You snap. It's the amount of imagination and creativity that was happening in that moment.
It's a beautiful moment. It's such a beautiful moment, which is so integral to the bond between Atticus and Letty later on and throughout the season. In her ability to protect him and his ability to then cover her because he senses that there's a real fear she has. Quite the sequence to shoot.